Mr. Simmons, a wealthy and influential businessman known for his sharp intellect and keen sense of strategy, often found himself contemplating the loyalty and integrity of his family. Despite his financial success and enviable reputation, doubts lingered in his mind. One evening, he resolved to uncover the truth in an unconventional way. His plan was as daring as it was risky. He would pretend to be gravely ill and blind, hoping to see how his family would respond and how they would manage his businesses in his perceived absence. Before setting his plan into motion, Mr. Simmons sought the advice of two trusted confidants. He called on Mr. Z, his loyal attorney, and Dr. J, his longtime friend and physician. The three gathered in Simmons' private study, a room filled with decades of achievements that seemed to weigh heavily on his shoulders. "Thank you both for coming on such short notice," Simmons began, his voice firm but laced with urgency. "Of course, Mr. Simmons," Mr. Z replied with professional poise. "What can we do for you?" "I've been contemplating something extraordinary," Simmons said, leaning forward in his chair. "I plan to fake being sick and blind to observe how my family handles the situation and my businesses. I need to know who truly cares for me and who is merely after my wealth." Dr. J furrowed his brow, clearly taken aback. "This is extreme, Simmons. Are you certain you want to go through with this?" Simmons nodded, his determination unwavering. "Yes, I must. It's the only way to uncover their true intentions and ensure the right person takes over my legacy." Mr. Z, ever pragmatic, interjected. "Understood. I'll create a separate account and transfer a significant portion of your wealth into it. This will secure your financial safety regardless of the outcome. I'll prepare the necessary medical reports to support your condition," Dr. J added. "We'll need to make this look authentic." With their combined efforts, the elaborate plan began to take shape. 3 weeks later, Simmons put his strategy into action. On a dreary evening, he called his wife, his voice weak and trembling. "Dear, I'm feeling terribly unwell and can't drive home. Can you come pick me up?" "What happened? Are you all right?" Mrs. Simmons asked, her voice filled with concern. "I don't know," he replied, feigning exhaustion. "I feel faint. Please, hurry." Mrs. Simmons rushed to his aid, finding him slumped in the driver's seat, pale and disoriented. She guided him into the passenger seat and drove home, her concern palpable. Upon their arrival, Simmons claimed he could no longer see and felt extremely weak. News of his sudden illness quickly spread among his children: Anta, the eldest son at 35, Jack, the ambitious second son at 30, Anna, the empathetic third daughter at 27, and Lay, the carefree youngest daughter at 23. Dr. J arrived shortly after to conduct a thorough examination. A few days later, he returned with fabricated but convincing results. "Mr. Simmons, it appears you are suffering from advanced liver cirrhosis, kidney failure, and a blood clot in your brain. This has led to a stroke and caused significant damage to your eyesight." Initially, the family responded with diligence and care. They ensured Simmons had access to the finest medical treatments, a nutritious diet, and a comfortable environment. However, as weeks turned to months, their dedication began to waver. The novelty of caregiving wore off, and the burden of long-term care became apparent. Gradually, they shifted responsibilities to the house staff, retreating into their own lives and concerns. Mrs. Simmons soon called a family meeting to address the situation. "Given your father's condition, I'll be stepping in to manage the company," she announced. "Anta will assist me as my second in command." Despite their lack of experience, Mrs. Simmons and Anta dismissed the advice of seasoned executives, convinced they could handle the business independently. Their overconfidence led to poor decisions, pushing the company into financial instability. Mrs. Simmons diverted large sums of money to her church for extravagant donations, while Anta drained company funds for luxurious trips abroad. Meanwhile, Jack focused on securing his share of the inheritance, and Lay indulged in an extravagant lifestyle, oblivious to the family's mounting challenges. Amid the growing chaos, Anna became deeply troubled. One evening, she confronted her mother in frustration. "Mother, this isn't right. Daddy deserves better. He's suffering and we're doing nothing to help. We need to send him abroad for proper treatment." Mrs. Simmons dismissed her plea with a wave of her hand. "Anna, the doctors have said his condition is terminal. Spending more money on treatment would be pointless." Anna's eyes filled with tears. "How can you say that? He's our father. He deserves the best care we can provide, no matter what. Unknown to them, Simmons lay in bed, his eyes closed but his ears keenly attuned to the conversation. Despite the pain in hearing his wife's dismissiveness, he felt a glimmer of hope in Anna's unwavering determination. As the family's dynamics deteriorated further, Simmons quietly observed, taking note of who genuinely cared and who was consumed by self-interest. His test was revealing far more than he had anticipated, setting the stage for the ultimate revelation that would change everything. Mrs. Simmons and Anta's domineering leadership created a suffocating atmosphere within the company. Employees worked under a cloud of fear, often subjected to harsh reprimands for minor mistakes. Those who dared to voice concerns or challenge their authority were swiftly dismissed. This toxic environment drove many experienced workers to resign, leaving behind a workforce ill-prepared to manage the company's demands. Within 8 months, the once thriving business was on the verge of collapse. Tensions reached a boiling point during a family meeting called to address the company's dire state. Frustration and accusations filled the room like a storm brewing in silence. "We need to act fast to save the company," Mrs. Simmons declared, her voice sharp. "I suggest we sell one of our family homes to bring in the necessary funds." Jack, seething with resentment, shot back. "Absolutely not. This mess is your fault and Anta's. You both mismanaged everything, and now you think selling our home will fix it." The argument quickly spiraled out of control. Jack, who had silently simmered with anger for months, finally erupted. "You two ruined everything. You treated the staff like they were disposable and drove the company into the ground." Anta leapt to his defense. "How dare you speak to us like that? We were doing what we thought was best." "Best? By squandering money on luxuries and church donations while ignoring sound advice? You've destroyed Father's legacy," Jack shouted. The room erupted into chaos as the brothers' words turned into physical blows, their shouts echoing off the walls. Witnessing the fight, Anna couldn't contain her anguish any longer. "Stop it, both of you. Just stop," she yelled, her voice cutting through the cacophony. "Is this what we've become? Fighting over what Father built while ignoring his health and the unity he always valued?" Silence fell, heavy and suffocating. Her words struck a chord, forcing the family to confront the reality of their actions. Yet, beneath the surface, the fractures in their relationships deepened. Lay, the youngest sibling, remained uninterested in family affairs, preferring to funnel money into her extravagant lifestyle with her boyfriend. Jack, focused solely on securing his inheritance, distanced himself from the company's troubles, further inflaming tensions. In a desperate bid to stabilize the company, Mrs. Simmons sold one of the family homes. Half the proceeds went to the company, while the other half was kept as her personal safety net. The sale, instead of mending wounds, tore them wider. Jack, feeling betrayed by her unilateral decision, exploded in anger. "How could you sell the house without talking to us? This isn't just your decision," he roared. "I did what I believed was best for the company and this family," Mrs. Simmons replied, unyielding. "You're destroying this family with your selfish choices," Jack shot back. The argument escalated into another shouting match, threatening to boil over again. Anna, heartbroken by the incessant fighting, stepped in with desperation. "Please, stop. Can't you see what we're doing to ourselves? Father needs us to stand together, not tear each other apart like this." Later that night, Anna sat by her father's bedside. She gently held his frail hand, her voice trembling as she spoke. "Daddy, I don't know if you can hear me, but we need you. They're tearing apart everything you built. Your legacy, your family, it's all crumbling. Please come back to us. We need you to make things right." Tears rolled down her cheeks, her heart aching under the weight of their crumbling world. Meanwhile, Mrs. Simmons returned home after a long day, only to be greeted by an unpleasant odor. Assuming it was a minor oversight, she checked the bathroom, but everything was in order. Following the smell, she realized it came from Mr. Simmons' room. Entering, she discovered he had soiled himself. Her frustration boiled over. "If you can't speak or hear, can't you at least signal for help?" "This is revolting," she snapped. Her words echoed with cold finality as she summoned the house staff to clean him up, instructing them to put him in diapers. Alone in his room, Mr. Simmons felt the full weight of his family's neglect. Quiet tears rolled down his cheeks as he thought, After everything I gave them, is this how they treat me now? I gave them my love, my time, my wealth, and yet, here I am forgotten. Word of Mr. Simmons' worsening condition reached his extended family in the village. Alarmed and eager to help, they made the long journey to Accra. However, when they arrived, they were met with a frosty reception from Mrs. Simmons. "Gal, what are you all doing here?" she demanded, her tone icy. "We heard about Mr. Simmons and came to offer support," Uncle Ween replied, his voice filled with concern. "You're not welcome here. Go back to the village. We don't need your help," she snapped. Stunned and heartbroken, the extended family had no choice but to return. As they walked away, they vowed to find another way to assist the man who had once been their pillar of strength. Later that evening, Anna returned home from work, her intuition immediately alerting her to her mother's unusually stern demeanor. Something was wrong. "Mother, what happened today?" "You look upset," Anna asked, her voice calm but probing. Mrs. Simmons glanced at her daughter sharply, her words clipped. "Your father's family showed up unannounced, thinking they could just walk in here and take over. I sent them back to the village." Anna's expression hardened in disbelief. "What? They traveled all that way to see him. How could you turn them away like that?" "We don't need their interference," her mother replied coldly, her tone unwavering. "We're managing just fine without them." The dismissive words struck Anna deeply. Disturbed by her mother's actions, she retreated to her father's room. Sitting beside him, she whispered softly, as if her words alone could bridge the emotional chasm widening in their family. "Daddy, your family from the village came to see you today," she said gently. "But Mother turned them away. They wanted to support you, they came all this way." Anna paused, waiting for even the faintest acknowledgement. But her father remained silent, his body unresponsive, his condition deteriorating to the point of near isolation. Her heart broke as tears welled in her eyes. "Daddy, I wish you could hear me," she pleaded, her voice trembling. "We need you to get better. Please don't give up on us." Her words lingered in the room, met only by the stillness of his presence. Determined not to let her father fade into abandonment, Anna resolved to do everything she could to protect him, even if her efforts seemed insurmountable. Meanwhile, Mrs. Simmons had assumed control of all decisions regarding her husband, shutting out the rest of the family. During one of her regular meetings with her women's group, she opened up about the strain she claimed to endure. "Ever since Simmons fell ill, I haven't had any intimacy," she confessed, her voice tinged with frustration. "It's been so long since I felt close to anyone." Abena, one of her more outspoken friends, offered unsolicited yet shocking advice. "You need to take care of yourself, my dear. There are plenty of energetic young men out there who can meet your needs. You deserve some happiness in your life," she said bluntly. At first, Mrs. Simmons dismissed the idea, but 3 days later, Abena introduced her to Quintine, a charming and youthful man with a magnetic presence. Hesitant but intrigued, Mrs. Simmons quickly found herself drawn to Quintine's carefree energy. What began as an innocent introduction soon spiraled into a clandestine affair. As Mrs. Simmons spent more time with Quintine, her absences from home grew frequent, leaving her responsibilities neglected. Anna, observant and increasingly alarmed, couldn't ignore the worsening state of her father's care. One evening, she confronted her mother. "Mother, where have you been? Father's condition is only getting worse, and he needs us now more than ever," Anna demanded, her frustration evident. Mrs. Simmons sighed, her patience thin. "I'm doing everything I can, Anna. You have no idea the kind of pressure I'm under." Anna's voice rose. "Pressure or not, we can't just abandon him. He needs our love and attention, not excuses." The heated exchange left Anna feeling even more isolated. Afterward, she realized her father needed more than her solitary efforts. The family had to come together, but the rift between them felt insurmountable. Determined not to give up, Anna called her siblings. She laid out the dire situation, her voice filled with urgency. "We have to support Daddy," she implored. "He's in such a terrible state. He needs us now more than ever." Anta's response was dismissive. "He's old, Anna. We can't waste our time worrying about this. We have our futures to think about." Jack chimed in, his tone equally cold. "I agree with Anta. We've done enough. It's time to focus on ourselves. Lay, indifferent as ever, added, I'm with them. We need to prioritize our own lives. Anna's heart sank. Their indifference felt like a betrayal. Returning home, she discovered another blow to her already fragile resolve. Her mother had invited Quintin to live in the house, presenting him as her new driver. Everyone, this is Quintin, Mrs. Simmons announced, her tone casual. He'll be helping me out as my driver since I haven't been feeling well enough to manage on my own. The reaction among the siblings was mixed. While some accepted the explanation without question, Anna bristled with anger. Mother, this is completely wrong, she said firmly. We don't need a driver. What we need is to focus on taking care of Daddy. Despite her protests, Quintin moved in, further destabilizing an already fractured household. Night after night, Mrs. Simmons would quietly leave her room to visit Quintin, continuing their affair under the very roof where her husband lay confined to his bed. Anna, feeling powerless, wrestled with the weight of her family's unraveling. Her father, the man who had once been the pillar of their lives, now existed as a silent witness to the betrayal and neglect surrounding him. All the while, Anna vowed to remain his advocate, even if she stood alone. Despite previous attempts to steady the company, Mrs. Simmons and Anta once again mismanaged its finances, plunging the business into yet another crisis. In their desperation, they proposed a drastic measure, selling 2 family cars and yet another house to inject funds into the struggling enterprise. The tension was palpable as the family gathered for an emergency meeting. We need to sell 2 cars and one of the houses to get the company back on track, Anta began, his tone unyielding. Jack, visibly frustrated, shot back. This is ridiculous. We keep selling off what we have to fix your mistakes. At this rate, we'll have nothing left. I agree with Jack, Lay added, her tone sharp but resigned. We need to find another way. This can't keep happening. Anna, calm but resolute, interjected. Instead of selling more of our properties, we need to focus on managing the company more effectively. Growing agitated, Jack made a bold and controversial suggestion. Why don't we just divide Father's properties now? If we don't, there'll be nothing left to divide later. Mrs. Simmons responded sharply, her voice laced with indignation. That's not an option. Your father is still alive, and we cannot divide his properties while he's here. Then we need to figure out if there's a will, Jack countered. Maybe Father made arrangements we don't know about. Determined to resolve the matter, the family summoned their lawyer, Mr. Z, to shed light on the situation. When he arrived, his clarification left the room heavy with disappointment. As long as Mr. Simmons is alive, his properties cannot be divided without his explicit consent, Mr. Z explained. Anna hesitated before asking, but, is there a will? Did he make any plans for us? Mr. Z shook his head solemnly. Unfortunately, no. Mr. Simmons intended to draft a will, but his illness struck before he could make any formal arrangements. The lack of clear direction deepened the family's anxiety. Without a viable plan, the company's future seemed increasingly uncertain. Determined to avoid further loss, Anna spoke up once more. We need to rethink our approach. Selling more assets isn't sustainable, she said firmly. We should bring in external financial advisors to help us restructure the company. At first, Anna's suggestion to hire professional financial advisors faced resistance, but the gravity of their situation ultimately swayed the family. Once on board, the advisors conducted a comprehensive audit of the company's finances. Their findings revealed glaring inefficiencies and chronic mismanagement. We need to implement strict financial controls and eliminate unnecessary expenses, one advisor explained. Additionally, we should explore new revenue streams and consider forming strategic partnerships. Anna took charge, rallying her family to embrace the proposed changes. We hired these experts for a reason, she said with conviction. If we follow their guidance and work together, we can save the company and secure our future. Under the advisors' leadership, the company began to stabilize. Their strategies for financial control and operational efficiency yielded promising results. At the same time, the family, burdened by shared guilt and hope, slowly began mending their fractured relationships. But just as the company started to recover, greed reared its ugly head. Mrs. Simmons and Anta, unable to curb their insatiable desire for wealth, decided to withdraw a significant amount of money from the company's funds for their personal ventures. Their decision, made in blatant disregard for the company's fragile recovery, alarmed their financial advisor, Mr. Noah. "If you pull this money out now, it will devastate the company," Mr. Noah warned, his tone grave. "Everything we've worked so hard to rebuild will be undone." Anta dismissed the warning with a wave of his hand. "We understand the risks, but this is something we need to do." "We'll manage just fine," Mrs. Simmons added confidently. "The company will survive." Their defiance left Mr. Noah disillusioned. Unable to support decisions he knew would be catastrophic, he submitted his resignation the following day. "I regret to inform you that I must step down," he wrote. "My advice has been consistently ignored, and I cannot be part of actions that will harm the company." Anna was crushed by the news. She wept bitterly, realizing Mr. Noah's departure signaled the company's likely collapse. Yet, despite her anguish, she couldn't find a way to sway her mother and brother from their destructive path. News of Mr. Noah's resignation and the impending withdrawal of funds spread quickly through the family, igniting outrage. Another emergency meeting was called, but the atmosphere was no less contentious. "This is madness," Jack exclaimed. "We finally had things under control, and now you're going to destroy it all for your personal gain." Leigh chimed in, her voice steady but critical. "This isn't right. The company and father's legacy should come first." Anna, though heartbroken, remained firm. "We're making a catastrophic mistake," she said, her voice laden with urgency. "This has to stop." Despite their impassioned protests, Mrs. Simmons and Anta refused to relent. Anna, feeling increasingly powerless, could only watch as their choices jeopardized not just the company, but the very fabric of their family's unity. One afternoon, Mrs. Simmons returned home to an unpleasant odor wafting through the house. Investigating its source, she found her husband, Mr. Simmons, had soiled himself again. Frustration overtook her, and she decided she could no longer tolerate the situation. Summoning a house servant, she issued a cold command. "Take him to the boys' quarters," she ordered. "That will be his new home. I can't tolerate this nonsense anymore." The servant, clearly uneasy but unwilling to protest, followed her instructions and moved Mr. Simmons to the small, isolated room at the back of the property. Later that day, Anna returned home and discovered what her mother had done. Horrified, she immediately confronted her. "Mother, how could you? Father doesn't belong in the boys' quarters. He's ill and needs our care," Anna exclaimed, her voice shaking with anger. Mrs. Simmons, unfazed, retorted sharply. "I can't let him mess up the living room like that. It's disgusting and intolerable." Tears streamed down Anna's face as she ran to the boys' quarters. There, she found her father lying on a small, unkempt bed, looking frail and utterly defeated. She knelt by his side, gently taking his hand. "Daddy, I'm so sorry," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I'm here for you. I won't let you be treated like this." From that moment on, Anna dedicated herself to her father's care. She ensured he was fed, kept clean, and as comfortable as possible. Yet, despite her efforts, she could see the toll that neglect and isolation had taken on his spirit. He seemed a shadow of the strong man she once knew. Meanwhile, Mrs. Simmons fully indulged in her newfound freedom and secret relationship with Quintine. Lavish spending became her norm, with funds flowing toward Quintine's pleasures, extravagant outings and substantial donations to her church projects. Nights away from home became a frequent occurrence, leaving Anna to shoulder the responsibilities of both the household and her father's care. Desperation drove Anna to plead once more with her siblings. She hoped they would finally recognize the gravity of their father's condition and come to his aid. "Please," she begged during a strained family call. "We need to do something for father. He can't stay in the boys' quarters. He deserves proper care and attention." Anta dismissed her plea with a cold tone. "Anna, we've talked about this. We have our own lives to live." Jack added indifferently, "I told you before. Our futures matter too. We can't keep sacrificing everything." Leigh, apathetic as ever, chimed in. "It's not fair, but we can't change Mother's mind." Their responses left Anna heartbroken and deeply frustrated. That night, unable to sleep, she decided to check on her father. As she moved through the quiet house, faint noises coming from her mother's room caught her attention. Curiosity and concern compelled her to draw closer, but nothing could prepare her for what she discovered. Through the crack of the door, she realized the sounds were coming from Mrs. Simmons and Quintine, the supposed driver, engaged in an affair. Shocked and seething with anger, Anna burst into the room. "Mother, what is going on here? How could you do this?" she shouted, her voice trembling with outrage. Mrs. Simmons and Quintine scrambled to cover themselves, their shame palpable. The room fell into an uncomfortable silence as Mrs. Simmons struggled to find the words to defend herself. "Anna, it's not what it looks like," Mrs. Simmons stammered. "You don't understand. I have needs, and Quintine has been there for me when no one else has." Anna's fury intensified. "How dare you say that? Father is lying sick in the next room, and you're here with him. This is betrayal of the worst kind." Quintine, desperate to defuse the situation, pleaded. "Anna, please, let me explain." Anna cut him off, her voice rising. "There's nothing to explain. Get out of this house right now." Without hesitation, Quintine grabbed his clothes and fled. Mrs. Simmons, however, remained defiant, attempting to justify her actions. "Anna, you don't understand," she said, her voice cracking. "I've been lonely and stressed. I needed someone to turn to." Anna's eyes, filled with tears of anger, bore into her mother. "Lonely? Stressed? What about Father? He's the one suffering. You've abandoned him, squandered money, and ignored your responsibilities. And now this. How can you even begin to justify it?" Mrs. Simmons snapped defensively. "I've done what I needed to do to survive. You think managing this family and the company is easy?" Anna's tone softened, but her disappointment was evident. "No, but this isn't the way. You've let us all down, especially Father." Before Anna could storm out, Mrs. Simmons delivered a chilling ultimatum. "If you breathe a word of this to anyone, you'll no longer be my daughter. Do you understand?" Anna froze, stunned by the severity of her mother's threat. "You can't be serious. You expect me to keep this secret? You've betrayed our family and Father." Mrs. Simmons, her face hardened with resolve, replied, "I am serious. If this gets out, it will ruin everything: the family, the company, our reputation. If you care about any of that, you'll stay quiet." Anna's voice trembled with pain and disbelief. "What about Father? What about his dignity? Doesn't that matter to you?" Mrs. Simmons hesitated before replying curtly. "Of course it does, but we need to handle this discreetly. A scandal will destroy us all." Overwhelmed, Anna left the room, her mind a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. Torn between protecting her father and maintaining her family's reputation, she resolved to act. Her mother's actions were indefensible, but Anna knew her father's dignity and legacy had to be preserved, no matter the cost. Recognizing the urgency of her father's situation, Anna chose a day when the house was quiet and empty. With the help of a few neighborhood boys, she carefully moved her father into a vehicle, her resolve unshaken. Driving straight to her family's ancestral home in the village, she was determined to seek the care he deserved and could no longer find in the city. Upon their arrival, the sight of Mr. Simmons, frail and diminished, shocked and concerned Anna's relatives. Fighting back tears, Anna addressed them, her voice laden with emotion. "Uncle Ween, Auntie Jimmy," she began, "I've brought Father here because his situation in the city has become unbearable. The medications and treatments aren't helping anymore. I believe with your help, traditional remedies and care can give him a chance." The room grew somber as her words painted a picture of neglect and betrayal. Uncle Ween nodded gravely, his tone filled with conviction. "Anna, bringing him here was the right decision," he said firmly. "We will do everything in our power to help him. Traditional remedies have healed many, and we will ensure he gets the best care possible." The family sprang into action without hesitation. A comfortable room was prepared for Mr. Simmons, and herbs known for their restorative properties were gathered. Lucas, the village's respected herbalist, was summoned to oversee his care. "We will begin with a detoxifying regimen to cleanse his body of toxins," Lucas explained, his voice steady and reassuring. "After that, we will use specific herbal treatments to strengthen his liver and kidneys." For the first time in weeks, Anna felt a wave of relief. Her father was finally surrounded by people who genuinely cared about his well-being. As the family gathered to discuss Mr. Simmons' condition, many relatives voiced their willingness to help. Memories of how he had supported them in better times inspired a sense of duty and gratitude. "Mr. Simmons has done so much for this family," Uncle Ween declared. "It's time we repay his kindness. Let's all contribute to ensure he gets the best care." Most nodded in agreement, pledging their support wholeheartedly. However, a few dissenting voices broke through the unity, laden with bitterness. Cousin Luna muttered under her breath, "He could have done more when he had the resources. I don't see why I should step in now." Auntie Mia sighed, disheartened. "It's sad, but we can't force everyone to help. We'll do our best with those who are willing." Later that evening, as the house settled into quiet, Mr. Simmons called Lucas to his bedside. His voice, calm yet purposeful, carried an unexpected revelation. "Lucas," he began, "I need to tell you something important. The truth is, I'm not actually sick. I am healthy. This was my way of understanding who genuinely cares for me." Lucas froze, his surprise evident. "You mean all of this was a test? But why, Mr. Simmons?" Mr. Simmons nodded solemnly. "I needed clarity, Lucas. I had to see who would stand by me out of love and who was driven only by selfish motives. What I've witnessed here, the compassion and care, has reassured me." Taking a moment to process this, Lucas nodded thoughtfully. "I understand, Mr. Simmons. Your secret is safe with me. I will continue as if nothing has changed. You'll have the time you need to see things clearly." Over the following days, Mr. Simmons quietly observed his family's actions. He saw the sincere efforts of those who genuinely cared for him, their love evident in their every gesture. Equally, he noted the absence of those who chose to withhold their support. About a month later, Anna sat by her father's side, her heart heavy with worry. Suddenly, she noticed a change. Mr. Simmons, who had seemed so frail, began to stir. To her astonishment, he slowly sat up, his movements steady, his presence revitalized. "Father," Anna exclaimed, tears streaming down her cheeks. "You're awake. You're strong again. I can't believe it." Reaching for her hand, Mr. Simmons held it gently, his gaze filled with a mixture of gratitude and resolve. "Anna, my dear," he said softly, "there's no need to worry anymore. I have never truly been ill. I feigned my condition to see how my family and loved ones would respond in my hour of need." Anna froze, disbelief and relief mingling in her expression. As he began to explain, she realized the depths of her father's wisdom and his unwavering commitment to understanding the truth about those around him. Anna was stunned by her father's revelation, struggling to process the weight of his words. You pretended. But why, Father?" she asked, her voice trembling with disbelief. Mr. Simmons drew a deep breath, steadying himself for the explanation. "I needed to uncover the truth," he began. "I wanted to see who among my family and friends truly cared for me out of love and loyalty, and who was motivated by greed and self-interest. I couldn't let my legacy and company fall into the wrong hands after I'm gone." His voice grew heavy with sorrow and determination as he continued. "I know exactly what's been happening in the city. I'm aware of the fights over properties and the reckless mismanagement of the company by your mother and siblings. I also know about your mother's betrayal." Anna's heart broke as she listened, her father's pain palpable in every word. "Father, watching them destroy everything has been unbearable," she confessed, her voice thick with emotion. "I tried to help, but they wouldn't listen." Mr. Simmons gazed at her with profound gratitude. "Anna, you have shown me what true devotion and integrity look like," he said. "Your sacrifices, your unwavering care, and your strength have proven that you are the one who can safeguard my legacy and lead this family." He paused, his sigh heavy with reflection. "Your mother and siblings, despite knowing where I was, never once came to check on me. They were too consumed by their greed and disputes to care. Their actions speak volumes." Looking directly into Anna's tear-filled eyes, he declared, "Anna, you are the rightful heir to my company and properties. Your wisdom, compassion, and loyalty make you the only one who can carry this family forward and protect what I've built." Tears streamed down Anna's face as she absorbed his words, overwhelmed by the weight of responsibility yet deeply moved by his trust in her. "Thank you, Father," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. I promise to honor your faith in me and protect our family's legacy. News of Mr. Simmons' remarkable recovery spread quickly through the village, sparking a wave of visits from family members who had previously turned their backs on him. They arrived with feigned smiles and hollow gestures, hoping to win back his favor. But Mr. Simmons, now resolute, was not fooled by their sudden displays of concern. "Why are you pretending to care now?" he asked them bluntly. "When I was unwell and vulnerable, you insulted me and walked away. Your hypocrisy is shameful." His words cut through the air like a knife, leaving the chastised relatives speechless. One by one, they left in quiet shame. Taking this moment to address the larger community, Mr. Simmons shared a heartfelt message. "True love and support must be steadfast," he urged. "Let us always stand by one another, not just in moments of joy and prosperity, but especially in times of hardship." A few days later, Mr. Simmons decided it was time to return to Accra with Anna. They arrived late in the evening, the house steeped in silence as the residents slept. As Anna guided her father to his room, they stumbled upon a shocking scene. Mrs. Simmons in bed with Quintine, the so-called driver. Frozen in disbelief, father and daughter stood in stunned silence. Mrs. Simmons, startled awake, screamed, "Oh my God, is this a ghost?" Panic spread across her face as her gaze landed on Anna, and the reality of her husband's presence set in. Anna, her voice firm, broke the silence. "Mother, everything you've done is recorded. Your infidelity, your betrayal, it's all on camera." Mrs. Simmons stood paralyzed, the weight of her actions crashing down upon her. Without uttering a word, Mr. Simmons turned and walked out, his dignity intact, retreating to the boys' quarters where he had been exiled during his fabricated illness. Though wounded by the betrayal, he found solace in knowing who truly stood by him. By dawn, burdened with shame, Mrs. Simmons packed a few belongings and left the house quietly. The atmosphere remained heavy with tension as Anta and Jack clashed over who was to blame. "This is all Mother's fault," Anta exclaimed, his anger unrestrained. "Her poor decisions and betrayal ruined everything." "Don't blame it all on her," Jack shot back. "You're the one who squandered company funds on your luxuries." Before the argument spiraled further, Mr. Simmons stepped in. His voice was calm but commanding. "Enough. Blaming each other won't fix anything. We need to focus on rebuilding and doing what's right." 2 weeks later, Mrs. Simmons returned, accompanied by church elders and family members, hoping to mend the fractured family. But Mr. Simmons, prepared for the moment, had evidence of her infidelity and the children's misdeeds captured on the CCTV. "Before we move forward, I want everyone to see the truth," he stated, playing the videos. The room fell into an uneasy silence as the footage revealed the extent of their betrayal and misconduct. Mrs. Simmons, overcome with shame, could barely meet anyone's gaze. When the videos ended, the church elders and family members left quietly, unable to defend her actions. Turning to her husband, Mrs. Simmons managed a choked apology. I am truly sorry." She attempted to take one of the family cars, but Mr. Simmons stopped her firmly. "You will not use my cars," he declared. "You've already sold enough of them. Find another way." His resolve marked a turning point, setting the stage for Anna to step into her role as the rightful heir and protector of the Simmons legacy. A few days later, Mr. Simmons summoned his trusted attorney, Mr. Z, to finalize the legalities of his estate. He made a firm declaration that Anna, through her steadfast loyalty and unyielding dedication, would inherit the company and family assets. His decision reflected the deep trust he had in her ability to honor and sustain his legacy. "Anna," he said with conviction, "you have demonstrated that you are the rightful heir. I entrust you to continue what I've built, with integrity and love." Once the legal proceedings were completed, Anna officially assumed leadership. Her guidance breathed new life into both the family and the company. What was once a failing enterprise began its journey to recovery under her thoughtful and determined management. Anna's transformation from a devoted daughter to a confident and capable leader stood as a testament to the enduring strength of love, integrity, and resilience. Through trials and challenges, the Simmons family found themselves more united than ever. The experiences they shared and the lessons they learned forged bonds that could not easily be broken. Looking ahead to a brighter future, they carried forward the legacy of a man who, in testing their hearts, had uncovered the one true heir among them. Mr. Simmons' story echoes another tale of a prosperous and influential man from Ghana, specifically from Koforidua. This man's journey, like that of Mr. Simmons, ended in tragedy, with his legacy overshadowed by familial strife. He passed away during the COVID-19 pandemic, and, astonishingly, has yet to be laid to rest. The delay stems from relentless disputes among his children and extended family over his estate. This bitter infighting has not only tarnished his once respected name but has also begun to dismantle his thriving business empire. Despite his achievements and close connections to prominent figures including both current and former presidents of Ghana, who attended his one-week celebration, his legacy now hangs in the balance, threatened by greed and division. Having left Ghana, I continue to hear updates on this unresolved tragedy. The greed that fuels this family's discord serves as a stark warning. These stories highlight the vital importance of familial unity and respect for the legacies left by those who worked tirelessly to build them. The lives of Mr. Simmons and the wealthy man from Koforidua remind us of the significance of careful estate planning and fostering unity within families. Protecting a legacy requires not only sound legal strategies but also instilling in one's loved ones the values of cooperation, love, and respect. These tales offer a poignant reflection on the fragility of what we leave behind. They urge us to see beyond material wealth, emphasizing the enduring power of unity and the importance of passing down values that will inspire future generations. Let us strive to leave a legacy defined not just by material riches but by love, connection, and respect, values that can strengthen and guide the generations that follow. In this heartfelt story, we've journeyed through the trials of Mr. Simmons, a man who tested the loyalty and love of those closest to him, only to uncover the true value of integrity, resilience, and devotion. His decision to feign illness revealed not only the fractures in his family, but also the unwavering dedication of his daughter Anna, who stood as a beacon of hope amidst betrayal and greed. Ultimately, her courage and wisdom proved she was the rightful heir to his legacy, teaching us all that genuine love and selflessness will always triumph over material desires. This story is more than just a tale of inheritance. It's a powerful reminder of the importance of unity, respect, and the enduring bonds of family. It calls us to reflect on what we leave behind, not just in terms of wealth but in the values and relationships that define our lives. If this story resonated with you, please take a moment to like this video to let us know you enjoyed it. Subscribe to our channel to discover more inspirational tales that stir the heart and provoke thought. And don't forget to share this video with friends and family who might need a gentle reminder about the true essence of legacy and love. We'd also love to hear your thoughts. What lessons did you take away from Mr. Simmons' journey? Did Anna's unwavering loyalty inspire you? Leave a comment below and share your perspective. We cherish hearing from our viewers. By engaging with us, you help keep these stories alive, spreading their wisdom and inspiration to a broader audience. Thank you for being part of our community. Together, let's honor these tales and ensure their legacy continues to grow.